was terrible. So we're going to look at map 2 or series 2 from Jcobbb instead, especially because the one map I wanted to review in the Faze Jcobbb debut was Inferno, which seems to be having some processing issues and looks like garbage. So Mirage Jcobbb, he actually has a great game in this one. If someone plays bad, I'm fine with reviewing that demo, but I wanted to review the overpass game from Jcobbb, and he just looked like a player that was uncomfortable. Like he was a tier 2 player joining a tier 1 legendary org, and he just wasn't ready for it. He just wasn't able to calm his nerves, maybe. And I think he was kind of playing in a way that was exploitable. I mean, he played pillar on B on overpass like 9 rounds of the half and then got double naded on the last round because he was there every single round. You know, he was just kind of going back to maybe what he might know, and it wasn't working. So seeing his second showing where he can actually get something done, I think is really important. It's interesting, though, to look at Faze as a whole while this is happening, because I actually feel like the way I saw Faze play on their T side was a little bit like Kerrigan playing with a stand-in, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Jcobbb here, stairs peek, his opponent has just crossed the CT. I don't like this peek. He spots out Makaze, that's great, but he has to back up here. You don't need to get a third kill or a 3v1. You don't need to force anything. You can play through jungle. Obviously, there's other ways to play this. The Kerrigan could have stayed alive in CT maybe. I just think he just needed to not die there. Just quite simply, I think if he doesn't die there, they're in a reasonably decent situation. He tries to force something in a 3v2. I would bet you that Kerrigan probably told him before this game to play a little more loose, to, you know, he's not going to get blamed for things. Kerrigan seems to be the stand-in whisperer, and a new player from tier 2 probably operates a little bit like having a stand-in, so I would understand if he tried to get him to play, just loosen up a little bit. That's oftentimes the hardest problem with players when they join a team, especially joining a team as intimidating as Faze, where they've won a Grand Slam with a majority of their roster. You know, you need this player to make his own plays, to feel comfortable, to feel enabled, so you just tell him, look, do your thing. And that means very likely in this series and the next one, I would hope to see him, maybe hope's the wrong word, but if as a Faze fan, I would expect and look totally positively upon the idea of Jcobbb making some over aggressions. But solid eagle kill from Jcobbb. Obviously they're going for the short stack, so Brokey's here as well. Can't quite land the shot, and the round really should just be converted pretty easily by Na'Vi, who, by the way, I mean, Makaze had an incredible game, as you can already tell by the fact that he aced on round 2 or round 3. Obviously a pretty solid game. Jcobbb, great game. Brokey is so back. He's so back for one best of 3, and we'll see how that continues. But Jcobbb, connector player here. Lots of mobility, lots of opportunity to get plenty of things done. You have to kind of play based on feel, though, to understand the right timing to do that type of nade out the smoke play. He finds the perfect timing to do it at, and it's not only that, but it's accompanied by a flash. I see so often that nade through the smoke that just blows it open, and you're just looking to duel. You're looking for a straight-up gunfight. Instead, that's accompanied by a flash, and not only that, I think was Kerrigan fighting off of short on the other side at the same time, because he also gets a kill. Oh, he's in window, blinds himself, and he just peeks out because they have the timing on the smoke perfectly. Yeah, that's I mean, that's a little late from Na'Vi. I wonder if there was some utility that Frozen threw to actually delay them, because that window smoke coming down, you really don't want the window smoke coming down when you're not all the way up short yet, obviously. And usually it doesn't. Usually you have a re-smoke there. But Jcobbb on the retake, counter strafing while holding W and having to counter strafe from that. Not optimal, but he does it seemingly flawlessly. So another nice kill. And I'm concerned. Well, I wouldn't say concerned, but I'm interested to see if that's kind of how a lot of this game goes. Sometimes you just have a game where, you know, he's going to pop off because he's hitting a lot of shots and not even in advantageous engagements, which isn't necessarily optimal. It's nice to see a player has great aim, but I'd love to see that if he can set himself up for some good engagements in a game rather than just aim, which is why, one of the reasons I think Donk, I thought Donk was not going to continue at the level he has for so long, is because aim waxes and wanes for most people, you know, like that's why Nico being such a longevity superstar is so insane. You expect, especially with riflers, there's a reason their careers are typically shorter, or their peaks at least are shorter. Here, you got the 4v3. I wish they were doing something here. You know, you have Kerrigan completely alone on B, just hiding in a corner here. They have someone holding short, so that means they have to be coming out of apartments. But at the same time, you have a player on A, you know, you have Brokey here. I don't know why the op scope looks so weird on my screen right now, but you have Brokey holding A with the op. You could be, I would like it if they were like re-aggressing middle a little earlier to actually allow for a rotation. So I actually do like, I didn't even notice when I was watching this that they did reaggress middle. I think they took maybe a little too long to reaggress middle, but it's always hindsight is 2020, right? Because Jcobbb just got a kill on the player at bottom mid not that long ago. Maybe they could be, if they're just, it's such a small window, but like 3 seconds faster here. If they're just 3 seconds faster, then they are in a position where this is well timed. But part of the problem is that Rain has 50 health, right? And he has to go through connector. So Rain is required, if you're going to go for the mid retake, he's completely required to be part of that retake. Although actually saying that, if he knows they're not able to be in ladder, then it might not be completely necessary. Like if Rain has been paying attention, and it looks like that's the problem. There could be someone in ladder, right? So Jcobbb has to be worried about it, and then it's a little bit more awkward for him to clear out middle. But still, insta rotation or insta reaction to that play to jump up towards short. Try and catch them before they're actually set up in the bomb site. I really like that play. Then he doesn't over-aggress. He actually gets the boost off to make sure that nobody in towards apartments is just going to get a free kill on him. The rotate push through the smoke. He waits for his teammate so he gets in good position. And then they're in the 3v1. The clear out towards bench, that's pretty much standard. I mean, you're going to die there sometimes, and the reality, I feel like in some 3v1s, 2v1s, is someone has to find the opponent, and the best thing you can do is find him without dying. But if you can take a reasonable engagement that you're fairly likely to win a large percentage of the time, and you do end up losing it, I don't think that you can be blamed too heavily for that. It's just the reality of it. You end up leaving your teammates, you end up leaving your teammates in a 2v1, and that's totally fine. I didn't want to be watching Jcobbb so much, but one of my hands is now holding my mic, which makes it a little bit harder to actually rotate through the players. But let's try this a little bit better. I should have got a mic stand. Maybe I will on one of my off days. But Jcobbb with the insta swing top stairs, obviously there's risk in doing that, but you've gone 8 rounds, well, 7 rounds previously without doing that. It is a play that has a lot of value. You can catch a lot of different players off guard in similar plays to that one. He almost gets the double kill as well. Sometimes you see that combined with some utility. I remember in one of the roundtable interviews, you had Spinks basically get told, hey, whenever you like nade bottom ramp, you so often peek stairs right afterwards. You basically always do. And he goes, yeah, I knew that. Like he actually finishes the sentence when the guy mentions that. I can't remember who mentioned that. I think it was Spinks, but regardless, peeking stairs, pretty standard. I like the way Mirage has been kind of adjusted. The shift that has happened in the Mirage meta over the years, or at least in the last couple of years, with the change to smoking off Palace instead of smoking off ramp quite as much. Obviously, you still see people smoke off ramp fairly often, but it's not like the standard to just spam resmoke ramp, because when you resmoke Palace, you're preventing that Palace player from getting information on what you're doing towards top connector and jungle, and those are kind of the areas of the map where you'd love to have a little bit of activity, be a little bit more free to go for aggressive plays, because they are in direct control of middle. Whereas if you're smoking off ramp, you're allowing that Palace player to maybe get a little bit of information. The engagement from stairs to Palace is deceptive. It's like you can get a headshot angle there, but it's actually not the greatest engagement of all time. And you can sometimes just get past that angle with a good flash, or what teams are doing now, which is smoking jungle and mollying stairs. You can kind of very quickly get past that angle and still attack the A site anyways. And it's a little more uncomfortable to actually deal with as an A site player. If you have one place smoked, you're seeing people do it now, right? They smoke off Palace, it gets re-smoked a bunch of times, and then off of that, you have the player on balcony, and he's kind of looking at that smoke and pivoting once in a while. I feel like that's a way more comfortable way to defend the A site, as opposed to having a ramp smoke where if someone just gets through it, if you're not watching it at all fucking times, someone can sometimes just get through it and then they get out this Tetris anyway. So it's like, what's the point? And an opper towards A makes a big difference. Like an opper towards ticket makes it very uncomfortable to try to almost ever do a ramp play. Here, I'm actually not even going to say this is necessarily Jcobb's fault, because he goes for this aggressive play towards middle, and his short player has a molly. And not only that, but does he not see his legs under there? Like, I would totally understand him not seeing those legs if they are on his screen. But it looks like he maybe could. Does he see legs there? I think he might actually see those legs. He might have seen those legs, but still, there's a molly there for a reason. There was plenty of time for someone to have been behind the boxes. Like there was a good 6 seconds maybe where there was no molly behind those boxes. And I understand Frozen wanting to hold on to his molly. I think maybe the pathing from Jcobbb isn't perfect because he's in a spot where he could die and Frozen can't do anything about it. Whereas if he was maybe a little bit up here in the middle of this area instead of at the side, if he was like here or here, then Alexi B would have to come a little wider to kill Jcobbb, and then at least Frozen could get the trade. Obviously, that's not what happens. Jcobbb starts to run back, and then he gets cleared or peeked out and killed. I feel like that could have been played a little bit different, but it may just be that like there's supposed to be a molly towards the boxes or Frozen, or usually someone else mollies, and because they're light one molly, Frozen decided to hold on to his molly, and then when he decided to hold on to his molly, it kind of changed the strat, and Jcobbb wasn't ready for it, because that's just a little, it's so obvious that like someone could be behind those boxes. I feel like there has to be an explanation as to why he played it like that. But here, this is so funny. The thing about this 1v3, it's such an insane 1v3, dude. But like if you look at it, I remember watching this, and I was thinking to myself, like, these guys are really close together. He gets this one kill, and then the spacing, like, Makaze's right there. He pivots really quickly, and Brokey's, like, not supposed to get the second kill. And I was just thinking, like, it's going to be such a meme if he just gets traded here, and it's like, oh, he could have gotten a knife kill and then just played a 1v2 from jungle with the bomb that he knows is coming up connector and I think doesn't have much time to do anything other than come up connector. Like, he could have been in a 1v2 that was relatively winnable, and instead he goes for this play. And if he had just got traded, because those guys were in pretty good position to actually get a quick trade, and he had to hit a really nice shot to get the second kill, then it's just kind of a meme. It would be kind of like, it would be so appropriate for Brokey based on the year he's had so far for him to die to the second player after not going for the knife kill. But instead, he pulls off some Brokey bullshit, brings it back to 6-4. Obviously, Faze did need a little bit of heroics to allow this win against Na'Vi to happen, but Na'Vi's a solid team, and with Makaze playing incredible CS, it's understandable that they would need a little heroics to make it happen in a 2-0 fashion. But here, Jcobbb just has to be aware of the possibility of someone coming up Palace. I mean, there's not much that really can be said about that. I feel like, am I crazy? Am I saying something unreasonable? It's a good flash. I would have liked the flash if maybe he flashed and then crossed. So he flashes and then crosses, but the molly's coming and he would have gotten pushed out anyways. But yeah, I mean, he just has to throw that flash and then jiggle and then be ready for that player coming out Palace. I think the reason, I mean, if we're looking at the reason he did that, it's most likely because there was a player on balcony that just moved just beforehand, and he's not expecting that player to have moved. So in his mind, the last time he looked at the radar, there was a player on balcony, which means a player can't actually peek out on him from Palace. They would have had to be peeking through the crack, and that's the type of thing that's going to happen in a game when you're essentially a stand-in. When you're a new player on a team, right? You're going to have those sorts of miscommunications. Totally understandable situation. Already into the 4v5. This would be a great round to have a flash and underpass, although it's not necessarily that easy. It's tough because, I want to see him be aggressive and maybe consider, and we can see on the radar, like, yeah, if he peaked underpass here, it would have been a kill. However, I believe he has peaked underpass already in this half, and sometimes when you're down 4v5, it's actually kind of like being on a force or on like a bonus round, or sometimes on, like just like a force kind of. I'm thinking like specifically about nuke lobby crunches. So in your mind, when you're thinking about like, okay, we're on a force buy, we should go for a lobby crunch on nuke. You're thinking to yourself, you want to go for a lobby crunch at the beginning of the round because that's when you can coordinate it the most easily. But if you actually watch pro teams, more often than not, they're going to go for plays in the mid round because if you do it at the very beginning of the round, it's a freaking force buy. Of course, they're trying to be ready for a lobby crunch. So you go for it in the mid round because that's when your opponents are most likely to be pivoting. They're rotating out of that lobby hold setup. They're rotating into an exit. They're pulling out nades, doing those sorts of things. And sometimes when you go into that like dry of a 4v5, like just insta 4v5 and there's no, like your opponents don't have to reset at all, generally they're going to be looking for those even up plays that you're going to make. They're going to be more often than not in the buddy system. And so sometimes you don't want to make that obvious re-aggression. In this case, it would have worked, but I understand the mentality. So Rain actually drops out window. Unfortunate death. And Jcobbb had a nade, but not a flash to actually, because I think you can double click throw a flash. I know there's one you throw from window. I believe there is one from connector as well, right? Am I crazy? That you can throw an underpass. The type of things you forget when you don't actually play the game physically, you know? I understand the macro, but I don't know any of the lineups unless I've seen a pro throw them, and I don't remember it either. Second half, generally, I don't give a damn about pistol rounds, but because we're focusing mainly on Jcobbb, I will pull out a pistol round if he gets apparently 3 kills in it. They go for the A fake, the classic QB sneak style play, and Mikaze is in the middle of the open looking towards B, which is understandable, I suppose. You get a pretty solid angle there from Mikaze. Then Jcobbb has to control space, and this gets really awkward. You're trying to control space and your team's coming back, but your opponents also obviously know that. They're like, okay, well, how did this round play out? At this moment, Na'Vi know that this was supposed to be a B hit, and the bomb is now coming back to A, or the bomb is going to stay B regardless, right? Like they know what the initial setup was. They just don't know what the actual play that's being made afterward is, although you tend to lean with this long of a weight towards probably they were coming back to A with the bomb, and Jcobbb has to try and maintain control of the space if he can, which he does a really good job of doing, so he doesn't allow anyone to walk back into the site. Of course, Na'Vi don't do if there's time, especially with guns. I like the way Jcobb's playing here because you can see Mikaze is trying his very best to bait Jcobbb to actually peek out towards him, and Jcobbb is giving him nothing, but he is making it seem like he could be peeking at any given moment. I would suppose that he wasn't supposed to be allowed to cross to that side of the site. Like I feel like someone probably was supposed to have shot at him before he crossed the site because Jcobbb could die there, and then it could get a little bit awkward. Most likely they're just letting Jcobbb play so they can play the 2v1 from the other side, or someone was actually supposed to stop the cross or jiggle it a little more aggressively. Into the anti-force buy, which by the way, Faze are terrible at. I believe someone did the stats, and Faze are like they're the lowest team in the top 20 after this best of 3. And I don't want to say it's nitpicking stats to pull that stat out right after they lose 3 of 4 in a best of 3. But of course, it's going to be a little inflated after you have just this insanely bad series, and maybe they'll go 4 for 4 next series and it'll balance out a little bit, right? But here, Brokey in the 1v1, he obviously thinks, like if we look at this from his POV, what is he thinking here? He's going to be thinking that Bit, hit the wrong button. He's going to be thinking that Bit is going back towards CT naturally. So he gets the 2 kills, peeks out, gets shot at from triple, spots the cross, grabs the bomb. Yeah, this is one where I think he would probably say he should have crossed to CT here himself. And the reason that it's not just a 50-50 in my mind is because there are guns down in jungle. So when you get down to it, he can get into jungle and he can cross through here long before Bit could get to here, which is where he would need to be for that to be a dangerous play, right? So if he gets out of murder hole and then he just peeks CT spawn, he has such a huge advantage against Bit with a deagle if Bit is actually trying to play that position with a deagle and hold the cross to market, that I don't think he has to seriously consider it as a big problem. And then when it comes back to after that, you cross over, you get the bomb plant. Okay, you let him get the AK. that's fine. But now you've got the free bomb plant. Instead, when you cross over towards short, and maybe he was thinking, I don't think he was ready for, like, one of the things I thought he could be trying to do there is you actually jump up short and then you peek back towards A site and you catch Bit trying to run for that gun, right? Because he's still got a deagle. You can peek out and catch him if he's trying to transition. You catch him in transition, essentially, right? And I think that would make a lot of sense. But Brokey jumped. Did Brokey hard clear that, or did he jump around that corner? Because if he hard cleared it, then I kind of understand. If he tried to jump around the corner, which is for some reason what's in my memory, but I'm not certain, then I just don't like that play at all, because you did give a little bit of time for Bit. And again, you could have just gone through CT spawn. You go through CT spawn there, you fight an AK with a deagle, long range, you have just every advantage in the world, and you give up the possibility for Bit to get the AK, but you still are fine. Here, wow, that is uncomfortable. Do they seriously lose this round? No. Brokey manages to find the clutch. Man, round swing must have loved Brokey here. Jcobbb probably shouldn't have his knife out here, I would say, is like a major problem. Or the thing is, it can be one or the other. Like, Jcobbb can have his knife out there jiggling just to be as hard to hit as possible. Understandable. However, then Kerrigan needs to be peeking out a little more aggressively on the jiggle to make sure that he can get the information over to Jcobbb a little faster. Obviously, Kerrigan was peeking more of this, like, I think that's like the standard spot to jiggle from. And if Jcobbb has his gun out there, then I think Jcobbb just turns around and he's in a reasonable position. But it could actually be both, that Jcobbb should have his gun out there, and also Kerrigan can be jiggling a little wider to get a little more information earlier, because even if Jcobbb has his gun out there, it looks like he would have had to turn and immediately win a gunfight, which is never comfortable. But this round, Jcobbb actually doesn't do a thing, isn't required to do anything, is the key distinction. Nothing is asked of him, and they win the round. 9-7 up. I mean, Na'Vi are a little on the broke side. And I think Jcobbb, by the way, ends this game with like 110 ADR, or is that... I think something really, really high. He does a really solid job, I think, so far from what we've seen. He doesn't do a lot of throwing. I think there's a couple of rounds where he could have done better, but it's hard for me to blame some of these rounds on him, because they're clear rounds where there's miscommunication, and miscommunication, I feel like, falls on both parties, right? Is that fair to say that a miscommunication where you make a play because you thought XYZ was happening, you could say one player is more to blame than the other, and I think in a couple of these, like, Jcobbb is probably a bit more to blame than the other player in this situation. However, I think both players maybe have a little liability or a little culpability some of the time, depending on the scenario. Here, Bit just has to get this kill. Like, if we're being completely real, this is a kill that Bit should be getting every time. That's the danger of being up on top Tetris, and you know, you have a good supporting flash from Na'Vi to give Bit time to go for that peek, and he just doesn't hit the shot. Not good from Bit. Bit didn't have... I mean, he's actually playing okay, but I think there's a couple of rounds in this game where Bit could have converted a round and didn't. And this round falls apart for Na'Vi basically based off of that. They essentially trade down, but because Bit doesn't get a kill, they just trade down to a man disadvantage and have to save. If Bit gets a kill there, he not only survives, but he puts on pressure. Like, he not only gets the kill, but he puts on pressure by surviving that his opponents don't have the free space, right? They can't full focus jungle, and his teammates can have a little more of an easy time actually getting a kill themselves or applying more pressure. So 11-7 now. Very unfortunate round for Bit to miss that kill, because as round swing won't tell you, it actually turns into meaning they not only lose that round, but they end up, sure, he could have gotten that kill and they lost the round anyways. But I think if he gets that kill, there's the swing in terms of round win potential from him getting that kill because of his position is very drastic. And then they go into this where, I mean, at this point, they're probably kind of expected to lose the round. I mean, the game. There's the smoke molly combo I was talking about. Hard clear on the player top balcony by Rain. That's one of the problems. Sometimes you get that kill, you get out, or you get that kill in Palace. And the question I see so often is like, why not stay in Palace? The problem with staying in Palace is that you're kind of trapped in there. And it's eventually, when your opponents know you're in there, it becomes kind of the same as trying to entry out Palace as a T, but without someone throwing a flash for you. But Bit, again, you can't be crouched here. You can't just be crouched sitting here. And I suppose you can. A lot of the time, your opponents are going to be kind of swinging out a little more aggressively and in doing so, they're not going to be able to catch your shoulder like that. But I think that's a spot where if you're just standing, it's an incredible difference between the disadvantage you have compared to crouching, because it just makes you a little bit wider. I'm trying to think of how you actually play that angle. It might just be as simple as standing up, but I feel like I'm gaslighting myself right now, because it doesn't feel like it should make that big of a difference. Still, potential final round, just a solid double entry from Jcobbb. I mean, this is what you got him for, right? You got him because he's a tier 2 player with some solid aim. Probably you thought he had some solid pathing, some solid trade fragging, and that's what he does. He picks up the first, gets the kill essentially through Kerrigan's dead body, which is not the easiest kill to get ever. I'll have you know, it's oftentimes quite complicated because you have to make the decision on how to play that, whether you're going to shoot your teammate or not. Couldn't get the kill on a Wonderful. It would have been nice for him to grab that frag, but the problem is he just ran out of ammo. Like, I don't think he hit 0, but he had to conserve his ammo there because he was almost out. Maybe if he had an extra 10 bullets in his clip or in his magazine, nerds, he actually manages to get the kill through the corner of the wall, but instead can't do it. So 12-8, and this does look like it is the actual final round of the game. They go for mid control, nothing really happens. And this is a game, the reason I said this looks kind of like Kerrigan playing with a stand-in is because if you actually think back to the way this half has gone, it's been exec, 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 with like a couple of defaults thrown in the middle. They're not really playing slow, calculated, methodical, default style CS. And it's not that Kerrigan always plays that style, and it very well could be that they have a game plan coming into this, but it just feels like to me, this is a game plan you go with when you know you're playing a hyper-coordinated team in Na'Vi and you know that you have a new player and you're just not going to be hyper-coordinated with that player. You're not going to be able to prevent yourself from giving up entries from time to time against a team like Na'Vi when you are Faze with a stand-in. So instead of trying to, iron out a default when realistically you're just not going to be able to with a new player, especially a new player that's this inexperienced, you just say, look, we can build out a few execs, we can build out an okay default, and if we pressure them with the execs so that they're not trying to do anything crazy when we do our defaults, we can run a few defaults in that time period, but we play this based on an exec style CS from our basis, and we set that baseline, and then we build out the half from there, and we run a few defaults in the middle. I think they did a really good job of it. I think Jcobbb looks like kind of what you want from a player. I would say Jcobbb looks, I don't want to say passable. He looks solid. He looks like what you would hope for from a player coming from tier 2, joining Faze. And he had a little growing pains in the first best of 3. The second best of 3, he still needs a little bit of work. He still needs a little bit. And this might be Faze playing sort of like stand-in style CS. So we'll see how he plays when he's running more defaults and he has a little more on a default. I think you have a little more autonomy on how you play yourself. But once they slot him in and get some practice, I think he's going to be fine. I think Faze has a good chance of being just as good, if not better, with Jcobbb, even though I think Elige is an insane player.